Good to see you there in Ghana. Hi, Michael. Maeve, welcome. So, my name is Mark, and I'm inviting you all to take a moment to think of a feeling that comes about when you think of great collaboration. And then I'm going to invite you to find something that could represent that feeling. It should be an arm's distance. We don't want you to leave your chair. And when I say go, we're going to fill our screens with that image or that color or that card or symbol just to have a quick icebreaker and say, yeah, we all know about collaboration. It's easy, right? Shall we get going? Do you think this is
Yes.
our lot, Em? So on the count, is everybody ready? Hi, Eileen. You look like you're on a train. You're invited to consider a word, a symbol, or an object that describes a feeling of great collaboration. Looks like you've got something there. Okay, everybody go. Fill up your screen with your image. There he goes with his unblurred. I'm going to do that. I'm sure I can get that in. Screenshot. Five, four, three, two, one. We got it. Well done, everybody. Great. So, for those that haven't met me, my name is Mark Tabbron. I'm part of the Inclusive Innovation team, and I've been proudly telling everybody about it because I just love what inclusive innovation stands for. In fact, that whole strap line, the concept of the world has big challenges and they deserve everybody around the table, that really strikes a chord for me. And I've been part of the team since 2017, I think, when Maggie invited me to one of the first II jams, well, my first II jam. And today we'll be touching on a feeling that I had then, which was a lot of vulnerability because I was invited to come and facilitate a group of facilitators. Can you think of anything more daunting? So this is an image of us. We gather regularly, we swap and share notes, and more than that, a lot of inspiration and love. And essentially, we think of ourselves as one of the greatest teams on earth to do some of the most meaningful work. And that is, of course, bringing people to have together to find solutions and to do it in a creative way. So I'm really excited about today's conversation. Thank you very much, Maggie and the team, for inviting me to host our speakers, as we'll be going into a conversation that really talks about collaboration, when it works, when it doesn't, and what we can do about it. Because our ultimate goal with this series of talks is to up our ante, up the game, to upskill and inspire each of us to continue doing this most meaningful work. So I'd like to uh, kick off and let you know that today's space is really about working across the boundaries. That's what we stand for. And when we encounter what we're working on together, collaboratively and inclusively, then we know that there's more juice available to us. The particular approach is that we're not here to fix things. We're not saying things are necessarily broken. As I said, it's about amplifying the work that we do and learning together what it takes to be the change makers that we are born to be. So let me jump straight in and give you a short introduction to our speakers. We're so grateful to both of you for joining us today. We have Chiugo, who's currently not in the DRC, but potentially on her way. She's currently in Nigeria today. And amongst many attributes, Chiugo is a climate and economic development strategist with a focus on on just energy transitions, extractives, transparency, and good governance. Chiugo has over a decade of experience shaping just energy transitions across the global south and has helped governments, civil society, and global institutions design and implement policies that protect people and the planet with a strong grounding in monitoring, evaluation, and learning. So, welcome, Chiugo. We're so glad that you're joining us today. Allow me to introduce our second speaker. That's Brigit, who's currently in Mexico City. Brigit is the executive director at the Miller Center for Global Impact at Santa Clara University and has over nearly 30 years, not over, nearly 30 years of experience in finding innovative solutions to development challenges right around the world, Africa, Asia, and Latin America. With expertise in strategic leadership, financial inclusion, and private sector development, she's worked with governments, donors, and the private sector, so is well versed in figuring out how to reach across some of these invisible barriers. Can we give a round of warm applause to our speakers? Welcome, welcome, welcome. So glad that you can join us.
Oh my gosh. That's so funny that you said That was my comms people said to say nearly 30, but actually it's more like 40.
Okay.
They said you don't want to come off as being, too old, essentially. That's
Yeah,
really
well,
funny. Had
I
a
I
chuckle
feel
on that one.
I feel the pain with that one. I'm 32 years of running my business, and then I'm like, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but we should be proud about our journey. So, Chiugo, you are currently in Nigeria. You mentioned earlier on our pre-talk that you might be offshooting soon to go to DRC. We know there's a lot of important development work there. I'd love to start with you and think about take a moment for you to kind of think about your work, and specifically, is there a moment or a highlight when collaboration, sorry, across boundaries has really worked for you and those that you're working with? And if so, what makes that collaboration possible? Maybe I'll start with you and then bounce the question to Brigit.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. My work really sits at the nexus of energy transitions, climate justice, critical minerals. So you cannot have a conversation about these leaving anyone out of the table. When you do this, the divide between North and South, the divide between developed and underdeveloped gets wider. And so collaboration is a starting point for that. When we discuss stranded assets, climate justice, energy transition, and the nature of this, of the place I work in or the sector I work in, is that you can't make decisions without getting consent from the people you're making decisions about. Particularly right now, you mentioned the DRC, and I work in the critical mineral space. And today we have critical minerals being the backbone of the energy transition, where you say leave fossil fuels and go to solar and EVs, but where do those minerals come from? And why are decisions being made without, for example, the Congolese people, where you're talking about tantalum and tungsten, or the population of Latin America, where we're talking about lithium and copper. So collaboration is the backbone. How this manifests itself can be difficult. And I think with my background being a global shaper with the World Economic Forum, multi-stakeholder initiatives offer not a solution, but at least an acceptable platform for discussion where no voice is left behind. But I think we will get deeper into this, the values of a multi-stakeholder initiative when working through collaborations, particularly where no solution is absolutely clear, and there has to be trade-offs made when decisions are being made.
Mm. Chiugo, I get like a bit of a shiver up my spine when you talk about the area, the geographical area, knowing or areas as you made reference to, and just the challenge that it must be, because when we're literally talking about natural resources that kind of come out of the ground where the people live, I can't imagine the complexity that you need to go through to feel that anything can actually be collaborative or consultative to those resources. And I suppose that's some of the real nitty-gritty challenges that you must deal with on a day-to-day basis, working with the various stakeholders that you work with. Brigit, what about for you? What comes to mind with the same question around brilliant collaboration and what fuels it for you in your area of work?
Yeah, I think I'm really excited to talk about this topic. Appreciate that. I think for me, I work with social entrepreneurs all around the world. We have a community, an active community of about 300 entrepreneurs that are really on the front lines of solving poverty through entrepreneurship. It's very, very exciting work, but also grueling work, because the reason why these enterprises exist is because of market failures, because of government failures, because there are forces that are actively working against them being successful. So it's not like regular entrepreneurship where, ooh, I have an idea, I see a market niche, I'm going to go jump in. This is really working at every moment against the grain. So our hypothesis is that by supporting peer collaboration and learning, that we are going to be able to strengthen the ability of the individual entrepreneurs to be resilient, to keep going even when the going gets tough, to realize that they're not alone, and to ultimately scale their impact more effectively. And in order to test that, we've been holding these enterprise summits where entrepreneurs are coming from all over the world. And the summits are organized by them, they're facilitated by them, the topics are chosen by them. And it's unbelievable. It's like magic. We've had one in Nairobi, another one in Goa most recently. And it's incredible how much they're willing to share and to support each other, to become extraordinarily vulnerable, the word that you used earlier. And all of them come out saying, I got this. I can do this. And they may have come into the summit kind of feeling like, oh my God, I don't know if I can go on. So it's a very, very powerful, that kind of collaboration and peer support is extremely powerful force for change.
Fantastic. I love what you're saying there about the peer support. I almost see it as fuel in the tank for collaboration, because that's what we need, is a kind of something that can fuel the direction, fuel the conversation. You've also both kind of made reference, I'll pick up on Brigit's words about against the grain. Can you both share a little bit more around what is this grain that we're against, when surely we all want to make the world a better place, right?
I mean, I can say, like, look, if you look at, where our economic system has brought us today in terms of environmental degradation, in terms of income inequality, in terms of, hundreds of millions of people being left behind, it's very clear, the political situation, it's very clear that we need to do something different. And people talk about reinventing capitalism. I mean, the way I see social entrepreneurship fitting into that conversation is it's like the pointy edge of the wedge that can reinvent capitalism from the bottom up. But there's a lot of headwinds. There's a lot of headwinds because even, for instance, in the funding space is really oriented to our current economic system, which is more about, I have a friend that calls it the wealth defense industry, which is more about concentrating wealth as opposed to distributing it. So I think at the highest possible level, that's what I'm talking about, is that these people that I work with are every single day going out there and facing those headwinds and making change happen at scale. And it's really the hardest job I can think of.
Thanks for that, Brigit. Chiugo?
I think going with the grain, just along the lines of what Brigit was talking about, going with the grain hasn't worked. And there are multiple reasons why that hasn't worked. And we know this hasn't worked because the buzzword these days for everything we want to do to plan to improve things is always systems thinking, systems change. The system has failed. The conversation becomes, how do we change it? Can we change it from within, from without? Do we need to dismantle the existing systems to build something up? And looking at that and seeing what failed in the initial system, in all systems that we look to change, there are vested interests in that are sort of invested in keeping or holding those systems up, that are difficult to dismantle. That's the first sort of characteristic I see. The second is that participation, and because we're talking about collaboration here, participation is usually seen as a ceiling, not a floor, not as a starting point. Sometimes these projects, these sort of solutions are sort of delivered, ready-made from sort of consumer countries to producer countries, or from the global north to the global south, however you want to look at it. The solutions are built, developed, dictated, and even outcomes predicted, even before stakeholders have a chance to weigh in to conversation around what the outcome should be, who should be around the table, and what the potential drawbacks and the potential sort of the solution not being fit for purpose in that sense is. So already at that level, there's no collaboration. There's a top-down approach, and that's the first sort of fracture I see in the system that claims to want to build something that brings everyone around the table, but doesn't. The second is that value seems to flow downwards, while for solutions that do work, it should flow upward and outwards. And what I mean by that is solutions built within communities, by communities, for communities, and then with the built capacity being able to support and export and collaborate on a more global level. So that's what I think when you say go against the grain, I think there's no grain to go against because it's failed. So let's sew a new dress. Let's do something different.
Yeah, I get you. I get you.
Yes.
I'm feeling from both of you something around this idea of like who's in the conversation, who's already in the system, who's in the circle, and who's perhaps not. And when we were looking to co-create solutions together, in the ideal world, would say, as inclusive innovation stands for, everybody should be around the table. How do you get everybody around the table in your work? And I just wondered, is there, like, when you consider the idea of people on the edge, those that perhaps are excluded by power dynamics or institutional rules, what is it that you can do to change that structure to be a better system in the future? How do you approach that?
That's an interesting one.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
I have something that I can say because, okay, so one of the things that I do a lot of is I speak at conferences a lot. Okay. And conferences are, generally speaking, pay to play. So what does it mean? That the people who have the microphone, who have the voice, are the ones who paid for it. And that immediately introduces a very dangerous power dynamic in my perspective. So what I try to do in these cases, and what I feel like, always learning, but becoming more and more successful at, is elevate the voice of those who are not in the room. And what by that, I mean the social entrepreneurs that are directly serving the communities that you're talking about. So when you go to these conferences, generally speaking, if the social entrepreneurs are there, they are either selling their wares somewhere in a trade show type format or pitching, trying to get funds. No one's listening to them. No one's incorporating their perspective in the larger conversation. Mostly it's like, oh, we're so great. We're so awesome. Look at all our AUM, assets under management. We're doing all this amazing work. And trotting out, that's the third speed, trotting out the social entrepreneurs to show how wonderful they are. So what I always try to do is, number one, always represent the perspective and elevate the voice of the entrepreneurs and, what we're hearing from them, number one. And number two, never agreeing to participate on any panel where there's not at least one social entrepreneur represented, at least. So, I mean, these are small things, but, I think if more people just did that and insisted that these voices are listened to, then we would have a much broader range of perspectives to consider. And because I'll just say one more thing about this, is that if you think about the ecosystem, the global ecosystem that supports social entrepreneurs in the world, I sometimes call it the Frankenstein's monster ecosystem, because each one of us with our own theory of change and our own investment thesis and our sectors and geographies and instruments and stage of development, we've created this monster that's almost impossible to navigate for the entrepreneur. So what I talk about a lot is how do we flip the switch? It's the same vein of what we're talking about here, right? How do we create a more entrepreneur-centric, how do we create a more community-centric ecosystem that shifts the power to those who are really at the front lines of solving the problem?
Yeah, I love what you're saying there, and it makes me think about something you shared a few moments earlier, where you said that these local social entrepreneurs, they organize their own summits in these
Yes.
regions, and so they're the ones that have got the mic from the beginning, right? And that's
Yes.
like a
Yeah.
good way, because then it's putting them up front. So I love what you're saying around from the offset, these voices need to be brought in, and how easy might it be if we can just empower them to do their own summits? But that's one solution. I love it. Chiugo, what about for you? Is there anything that's been really top of mind?
Yeah, thank you so much. That was both of you with Mark and Bridget. You shared really, really powerful and thought-provoking insights there. I know, Bridget, you said you wouldn't attend a conference or sit on a panel if there are no social entrepreneurs. In the energy sector, for me, I wouldn't attend if there's no woman on the panel, or I try to push for that because it's usually quite male-dominated. Again, in the energy, climate, critical mineral space, the voices that are usually excluded are most likely or most often the ones that are being exploited. So, with the work that my past work with the EITI, which is the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, working on the extractive sector basically in Francophone West Africa, we had within the standard quotas. Now, we all have our thoughts about our point of view about quotas. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. And with this particular case, this example, we were in Togo at the multi-stakeholder group meetings, and they had put the, okay, 50% participation of women, and they just plopped them down like it was tokenism in its essence, because they didn't understand the technical discussions that were being had around the table around oil and gas revenues, how they were being allocated, how they were being reinvested into the community. So for me, when I look at that, and also looking at the work I've done within the ESG space, where there's this push for ESG standards, that's environmental, social, and governance standards, to be fit for purpose and standardized, because honestly, there are way too many now, and it's
Yeah.
very hard to standardize. So we're pushing for standardization, but bringing the same standard that you use in a country like Norway, where I worked at the EITI, and bring it to work in a country like DRC or Nigeria, or it wouldn't work. And all those turn to basically tick box exercises. So just thinking around what you've both have said, I think something that could work is, first, don't just invest in participation, invest in preparation. Anyone that's being
Mm.
represented should be prepared. So that requires some funding for capacity building. And that takes more time, unfortunately, when we have donor funded projects that just want to report progress immediately. Um, it's not just about participation, it's also about preparation and building capacity in that way. The second is let the people living to the project tell their story, because a lot of stories have already been told through the frame of whatever a donor wants to put forward. Data sometimes get distorted, especially in places where it's difficult to collect data. So, with situations where designing projects could be an issue because there's this information gap, information asymmetry, there needs to be that preparation, but there also needs to be genuine stories told.
Yeah.
And then the last thing would be rotating leadership within multi-stakeholder groups, so that everyone feels not just that they're sitting around the table, but they're taking active responsibility for the outcomes of the group.
Mhm. Thank you for those recommendations, those suggestions, Chiugo. I'm aware of time. We've still got about 7 minutes or so before we're going to move out into breakout groups. And I'm reminded of our prep call when we were chewing a little bit on this concept of collaboration at the edge. And I remember the conversation that we had with Maggie. It kind of moved into the space of vulnerability. And I'm wondering for the two of you, if I asked you the question around vulnerability potentially being reframed as a superpower, what could this look like for you in your work? And do you have an example that you could share today around how we could tap into that superpower when we're wanting to bring different voices together?
Mm.
I, I could potentially go ahead. Vulnerability is a superpower, but it's also quite unnerving. And the most difficult thing that I've had to do, especially when rushing against a tight deadline, is to be honest and say, we have to stop this now because it's not responding to the needs of the people we're actually working for.
Mhm.
That sort of makes everybody's head turn and know we have a result to deliver and we are delivering it. And that's really hard. Taking the example that I gave in the case of Togo when we're discussing sort of extracted sector revenues and saying, okay, we have to take a pause here. Can we develop a framework where the oil and gas companies can train the women on these are our forecasts, this is what is going on, and build stronger collaboration between them? uh, being honest and being vulnerable allows everyone else to do the same. Because then we found out that not it wasn't just the women who had no clue of what was going on. Other civil society organizations didn't. But they just come with their talking points and spread that out, and then they tick the box and they move, and the situation
Hmm.
remains the same. So vulnerability is a superpower in the sense that it dismantles the veil we've put on ourselves on this is how things should be and this is how we're going to go, and makes everyone honest. It keeps us honest, and it keeps us accountable, not just to ourselves, but the people we're called to serve. I think I'll stop
Mm.
there for time.
No, that's brilliant. Thanks, Chiugo. I love what you've added from our previous conversation, and it's this concept of honesty. And just like, well, how does the honesty actually show up? And maybe honesty can be
Mm.
looked at as another word. I think of authenticity, being with
Yeah.
integrity, speaking the truth, even when it is against the grain. And I love your example of like, wait there, we've got a report or a deliverable that we're aiming towards, but if it's not really serving everybody, who's going to have the bravery to stand up, be honest, and say this isn't working? And I guess it's almost like that honesty is one way to put your foot out into the world of vulnerability and be the change that you want to be, because there's no point
Mm.
going one way if you feel it's not the wrong way. What about you, Bridget? Have you got any experiences or examples you'd like to share?
Yeah, it's interesting that you said authenticity and integrity, because I often when we have these kind of exercises, when you say what's your superpower, a lot of times that comes up for me is this idea of authentic, because I do believe that they're very related, right? Authenticity and vulnerability. Showing up as your true self. The example that comes to my mind is around an initiative that we recently worked on with a group of seven other, we're self-identified as impact first investors. So we have felt the need to reframe impact investing, because we feel that impact investing has sort of lost its way in terms of really focusing on impact and being too focused on financial returns. And so there's a group of us. There's seven others that include organizations like Acumen and Kiva and Halcyon and many others that may be known to folks. And what we all did is we shared our data on how much it costs to deliver impact first investing. And that is a huge step. Well, first of all, sharing your data, we anonymized it and analyzed it and everything like that. But the idea is like, look, we're never going to get any further. We're never going to understand why there's this valley of death, why it's impossible to serve certain entrepreneurs at a certain stage of development under the logic of the current fund system and banking system and everything, if we don't look at ourselves and put it out there, like, okay, and own it. And to say, okay, what we found is that we are not inefficient. Yay us. But it does cost more. It costs more to do these smaller transactions and to accompany these entrepreneurs to ensure that, to kind of help co-create the impact that we want to see. So we have this global collaboration among these these folks that are saying, yeah, actually, you know what? It costs 13 cents on the dollar more to deliver funding to impact first entrepreneurs. And isn't that a good deal? So trying to reframe to say, oh, we're going to just sort of, wring our hands around the fact that we are not commercially viable. Listen, if the markets could take care of these problems and these projects were commercially viable, they would be solved. We wouldn't have to have impact investing. We wouldn't have to have impact first investing. So it's really been this amazing response to this collaboration. First of all, because we collaborated among peers / competitors to, sort of really put our data out there to the world. And then secondly, the results of it are making us realize, look, we need to stop trying to be the sort of the poor stepsister to the commercial world and look at ourselves as, hey, isn't this a marvelous alternative for philanthropic resources? And understand that, yeah, somebody has to pay for the impact. And it's okay. So anyway, I think it's really been an amazing opportunity to bring that kind of vulnerability and authenticity kind of on almost an institutional basis across several organizations. That it's been kind of a game changer for everyone. It's shifting the conversation that way.
What a great example. I love this idea of moving away from the competition, like this is my data and it's for me only, to actually, wouldn't we all win if we could access this data together? What a great reframe, and what a great example of switching that. I'm sure will continue to make a difference in that space that you're working. So with the awareness of time, I'd like to say thanks so much for kicking us off. That was really, really rich. I'm hoping that our audience are kind of feeling inspired and starting to chew on this question around collaboration and the space of what vulnerability as a superpower might unlock in all of our work that we're doing. In a moment, we're going to take you out into breakout groups. I'm suggesting 4 people in a group, but if Emma says it's 3 or 5, that is what it will be. And the idea is that you'll have an opportunity to very briefly introduce yourselves. You might want to share where you're at, and then a little bit around your initial reactions to the conversation that you've heard, and then make sure that you've got time to zoom into that question for you. In what ways might vulnerability be a superpower currently or in the future for your work? And then the breakout will last about 20 minutes. We'll come back and then we'll have a plenary reflection and then a closing with our guests. So breakout rooms ready to go. Please make sure you share the air and kick off. Make sure the first person leads the way with the right type of energy. We'll see you in 20 minutes.
Perfect. Thanks, Mark. So everyone, I'm going to automatically pop you in breakouts now. I'll send time reminders that will pop up at the top of your screen. And of course, if you've got any problems or you get booted out, just come back here to plenary and I'll be here to help. But enjoy your conversations. The prompts are in the chat and they'll remain there throughout the duration. And we'll see you in about 19 minutes. Here we go.
Brilliant. Thanks, Emma. Hey, welcome back. So I hope that you had a great conversation. Hey, Leslie, good to see you. We have got a moment now to kind of open up the floor and just get some feedback and reflections from everybody. Would love to hear from all of you, but we've only got 5 or 6 minutes before we'll do a closeout with our 2 speakers of the day. So the floor's open. What did you guys chat about? What stuck out for you? What are you carrying away from today's chat? Apart from love.
Maybe just one quick thing. So I loved Toby because he was at the end of our session. Oh, sorry, I didn't raise the hand. So I don't know what it's more raising hands or just.
Go, my friend. You go.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem.
I love Toby because he was posing at the end of our session this question about power, knowledge, status, and vulnerability, and we just wanted to start to discuss, but he then left already the breakout room. So there was a nice, kind of intervention, so making us think and then leave and so. But it's really what we got in the end. So so the vulnerability, when people coming together with different status, with different power, that there is lots of things going on. You really have to consider. We couldn't discuss it, but in the end, we came to that point with people kind of rely on their knowledge, on their status, and how to deal with that, so with power imbalances. So sorry now.
Sorry, not sorry, Patrick. Thanks for kicking us off. That was great. Lydia.
Yes, I just had to say this. So Tim gave us a good analogy in our group about who really are the people who we call stakeholders. And when you think of it, as stakeholders, a stake is what holds a tent together. And the tent is covering the people who are inside, who are probably royalty or whatnot. But imagine if all the stakes were taken off. The roof falls down on those who are considered to be royalty and more powerful. They really are the most vulnerable and not necessarily the stakeholders. And I think that is absolutely powerful. And that image is stuck in my mind. Thank you, Tim, for sharing that.
Lydia, thanks so much. And thanks for that input, Tim. With the awareness of time, let's jump straight back to Brigit and Chiugo and ask you both, if you could redesign a mechanism tomorrow to elevate the voices of the most excluded in your communities, what would you build and what would it change? It's a big question, I know, but I know you've got it.
Okay. I can go ahead and start this. The
Brilliant.
truth is, and I know we were a bit vulnerable and honest in the breakouts that we had. The truth is, I would not just redesign one mechanism. I'll dismantle all of them. I don't know how feasible that is, but it needs to be dismantled to build everything up. But if I was just to give one example of something that could work, would be within the work that we do in either social entrepreneurship, like Brigit does in all our work, to build sort of a community authority infrastructure. So not just a multi-stakeholder group or sort of a consultation process with a workshop here and a hackathon there, which is all great because we come up with solutions, but these come way too late and do not include everyone around the table. And so building that would take a lot, but also it would make FPIC more powerful. FPIC is free, prior, and informed consent before doing any project in the community. That is important, and that is so it's relevant for anything, any project we hope to do. What would that change? In the short term, things will be slower. Governments and investors will push back. There will be a transition period, but this is needed to make sure that no decision is made for us without us in that sense. I'll close there. I'll hand over to Brigit.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chiugo. You smashed that one out of the park. Brigit.
Well, look, I think for me, building on these summits that I was talking about before. So building an infrastructure where there's peer support and peer learning, I think is extremely important, because at the core, I think we as human beings just need to feel that we belong and that we have purpose and that we matter. And by validating those voices and having people problem solve across the world among like-minded people, without that power dynamic, without I've got the money and you don't, and without all of this kind of noise in the system, I think can be like magic, essentially. And my experience, if I could wave a magic wand and find a costless way to build trust and community across the hundreds of social entrepreneurs that have common cause to end global poverty and protect the planet, I would love to do that. I don't know exactly what that would look like, but that's what I would love to see.
Well, we're clear that we need a magic wand, and the work's just beginning for us all to continue this. I want to say thank you so much to Chiugo and Brigit for joining us today, for sharing your experiences in the field at the coalface, kind of literally, and to each and every one for participating in today's conversation. Thank you, everybody. I'd love to hand the mic over to Maggie, so Maggie can land the plane, as it were, and let us know what's happening for our next event.
Absolutely. Thank you. I want to second the thank you, and also what a rich conversation that was. So glad to have your conversation here, and there are conversations ahead. We have one, we're taking a little bit of a break for the Northern Hemisphere summer, and we will be back in September. We have Christina Schonleber from the Association of Pacific Rim Universities, along with Anik Baduri, who's the director of the Asia Science Mission. And we don't yet know what they're going to be talking about because we're going to have a briefing with them soon. But for those of you who are following us, you'll hear about it, and we hope you'll register. Follow us on LinkedIn because we are always talking about this on LinkedIn. And on LinkedIn, you can hear what else we're doing. Also, before you go, we love feedback. It is a gift, and we would love to know how you felt about today's conversation, how it went for you, ideas you might have also for people who could join the conversation. So the link is in the chat. Please tell us about your experience today. It really helps us. Thank you for joining us. We are excited that you came. Thank you.
Great to see everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye,
Thank you so
everyone.
much,
Thank you.
Mark. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Stay further.
Thank you. Bye bye.